Welcome to How I Write Novels in 114,858 Easy Steps. I'm Seeley James, and this is my behind the scenes writing journal. It's a live case study in novel writing from blank page to finished book. So, who am I? I'm the author of 17 independently published novels since 2012, the Sable Security series for the most part. And they are not exactly bestsellers, but I'm working on it. I do have a rabid fan base, so gobbles up every new release. And I do all right, actually. My agenda is pretty simple. There's nothing for sale. I don't have any webinars. I don't have any services. I don't have any books on writing. This is just me putting out there what I do and how I write. And maybe it'll help you, maybe it won't. But it should give you a little bit of a clue as to how to put a novel together, at least how I do it. And you can figure it out for yourself whether that works for you. In this series, the way that it's going to be put together is that in session one, this session, we're going to talk about the writing life, my year, the amount of research I do, how I go about writing, how long it takes, that kind of thing, editing, the whole process in a big picture look. And then we're going to go into the resources that led me to write the books how I write today, the books that worked and the ones that didn't. I've read over 100 books on writing, so that may help you a little bit. In session two, we're going to go into the hero's journey and how that works, how it has influenced people, variations on it from Blake Snyder, Christopher Vogel, Joseph Campbell. And then we're going to go into one of my favorite pieces for writing is Story Grid, an excellent book that really breaks down how scenes are made, how sequences are put together, how novels are put together. It really gives you a big picture on how everything works. And then in session three, I'm going to talk about how you turn all that theory into actual written words. And then I'm going to discuss how I wrote The Alpine Decision. That was my most recent book. And I'll tell you how it came together and in a broad strokes and an overview. After that, there'll be weekly sessions in which I review how I wrote the book that I'm writing now, how I outlined it, how I didn't outline it, how my outline worked, how it didn't work, how it's constantly evolving, and how I put chapters together, what I was aiming to do, and what I actually did, which is not always the same. Uh, Sometimes I come up with a brilliant idea halfway through and my plan goes out the window. Sometimes I write something and it doesn't stick to plan, and I have to go back and rewrite it so that it does stick to plan. All kinds of little nuances like that. I'll show you things that I do as I'm planning a scene, and then go back and edit that scene and say, you know what, I left out something that's really critical here, that kind of thing. And hopefully that'll help you. That'll be an ongoing basis. I don't know how many sessions I'm going to do because I haven't finished the book yet. So, what is the writer's life like on a daily basis? It's lonely. It's you and your imaginary friends having a nice, wild conversation, thinking about how things would work. You find yourself actually editing arguments that you had in your head with your imaginary friends, and then getting back to the page and going, you know what, he didn't say it that way. And you can rewrite the whole thing. It's really so much better than real life, but it doesn't really prepare you for real life because you get out there in the wild, and next thing you know, you're having an argument and you don't know how to edit yourself as you go along. Well, I call it existential loneliness and dread. The dread part is because at some point you're dreading that if you actually finish, then you have to publish it, and then people are going to review it. And it's a perfect book until somebody starts reviewing it, and then maybe it's not perfect after all. And anxiety creeps in and all that kind of thing. But the great part is when you're just starting out, it's the most beautiful book ever written. The first thing people want to know is, how long does it take me to write a book? Well, it used to take me about 6 months to write, edit, publish, get it out there, do the marketing and all that kind of thing. But a couple of years ago, my wife died unexpectedly, and I discovered that she was doing an awful lot in our family and in the home. And now that I've picked up all those pieces, it takes me about a year to get a book done. The year goes like this. In January through March, I do a lot of research, and that research is a lot of books. I read a lot of nonfiction books. This year, I read a 900-page volume on the French Revolution, a couple of 700-page books each on the American Revolution. I read a book called Why Nations Fail, a whole lot of erotica. We don't need to talk about that. And stories about authoritarian regimes, because the book that I'm writing is set in 2065, and it's about an authoritarian regime and a rebellion to overthrow that regime. Anyway, so that's the first part of my year. I'm formulating in my head how this story is going to work and what kind of information I need to make that happen. And then I start writing, usually in March and April, and then I really get rolling in the early summer through July. This year I'm a little behind schedule. And then August through September, I start the editing process. Like I said, I'm about a month to 6 weeks behind schedule, mainly because this current book, which is near future dystopian, required a great deal more world building, and I discovered I did a lot more world building than I needed to. So I then had to figure out what was important and work it that way. Um, then I turned it over to my editors and discover that it's not as great a book as I thought it was going to be. And they bring me down to earth, and boy, are they not shy about bringing me down to earth. That's a good editor who really tears your work apart. A really good editor will also tell you what the great parts are, but that kind of editor is really hard to find. They all love telling you what doesn't work. Um, and then anyway, then I get into October, and that's when I put on the finishing touches. In October, November, December, I do the marketing and all that kind of thing, production, and put it out there and try and get line up reviews and get my readers interested in it and that kind of thing. So then I get it all done and start the process all over again. And this is what that process all over again looks like in graph form. A little bit of fun here. AI always wants to help me, and I thought, well, go ahead, see if you can graph this. And it was kind of interesting. It was kind of nice. I had to put in a few things like imagine Sisyphus happy, because the writing life really is Sisyphus. As soon as you get done, you start over. So, what is my writing day like? This is going to be different for every writer you talk to. Everybody has their own routines. This one, it's taken me from over a decade to work it out, but this is how it works. The first thing I do is I get up early in the morning because I live in Arizona. If you don't get up early in the morning, it'll be hotter than hell, and so you have to get up to climb your mountain. I literally climb a mountain called Camelback Mountain in the middle of town. We get up there by dawn, so you don't bake to death, and then we get down and go to the gym, do a little more workout, read the paper, have breakfast, and then I'm ready to go. I usually procrastinate or find some fascinating stuff to read, whatever, get lost in Instagram. Then I work, usually editing some of the work that I've done the day before, or reviewing what I've done, or sometimes planning ahead. Sometimes my outline I review my outline constantly, and my outline is at some points is only a couple chapters ahead of where I am. So it needs a little help sometimes. Sometimes I can get way ahead, and other times it's just almost pantsing. And we'll get into that later. At noon, I take a little break, try to get my head straight, and you're sitting all day long, so I try to get walking around a little bit. And then in the afternoon, I start working again, and I work very slowly at first, and then I begin gaining steam. And somewhere around 4 o'clock, I really start pouring it on. This is where I've struggled all morning. It's Oscar Wilde said, I spent all morning putting a comma in and all afternoon taking it out. And it's kind of true for me as well. My from lunchtime till about 4 o'clock, I agonize over certain words and the structure of a scene and that kind of thing. And then somewhere around 4 o'clock, I just start pouring words onto a page, mainly because I've got a deadline. I always like a lot of famous authors, I try to hit a couple thousand words a day. Um, a lot of days I don't do that at all. Sometimes I don't write any. Sometimes I write 800 great words, and I think that's better than 2,000 lousy words. So I have kind of a variable, but I usually get cranking on it around 4 o'clock, and then sometimes I'll go till 6, and then I go out with friends, or sometimes I'll go till 8, and sometimes 9, and sometimes 10, and then I still have to get up at 4 in the morning to go climb that mountain. So, but that's what my day is like. So where do you start? How do you learn how to write? And I think the, the the basis that everybody goes from is Joseph Campbell's The Hero with a Thousand Faces. It was written in 1949. He wrote 6 more books on the topic. All of them are really good. I've read The Hero with a Thousand Faces 3 times. The thing I got to admit, it's over my head. It's really difficult. It's really graduate level work on mythology, and it's brilliant. And there's times when I'm reading it where I think, wow, this is great. I really get it this time. How you put it into action is really difficult. And so, luckily for the world, Christopher Vogler, an executive at Disney, um, if I'm not mistaken, I believe he was responsible for Lion King, or took responsibility for it after it was successful. I don't really know. But he wrote a book called The Writer's Journey, and it puts the hero's journey in perspective. He was writing for movies, and movies are very short. They're about 25,000 words. Novels are about 100,000 words. There's a lot more character development involved in novels, and so it doesn't give you everything you need to know. Uh, so Blake Snyder also wrote a very accessible book called Save the Cat, and his principle is that in every story there's a save the cat moment where you have to go and save the cat. It's brilliant, it's fun, it's very accessible, easy to read, and I recommend you read Blake Snyder and Christopher Vogler for sure. If you really want to be a nerd about writing, you should definitely read Joseph Campbell. But one of the books that really puts the whole writing world in perspective for you would be Robert McKee's Story. And that book is about as hard to read as Joseph Campbell's. You really got to be going deep on that thing, taking notes, working it out. I've read that one 3 times. I think the third time I really got it. He has 2 other books, Dialogue and Character. Excellent books. You should definitely read those. Those 3 books will really help you understand how to put words on paper that will really be fascinating to other people. Well, so much so that they'll buy your book and spend money on it. And that's that's the key. The biggest book that's really changed my life as a writer, I've got to say, is Story Grid by Sean Coyne. This one really helped me piece together how actual scenes are made. And what's funny is the same principles that Sean Coyne explains are in Robert McKee's book, but they're not as easy to understand. And uh, Sean Coyne, or maybe it was just me and just the time in my writing career that I actually read that, but Sean Coyne's book really pieced it together, and I could see how scenes come together, how the pieces get put together, how those expand into a bigger scene and a sequence and act and the whole thing. And it really made it so that I could completely write a story. And you'll notice if you read, if you're crazy enough to read my entire collection, if you start at book 1 and go through to book 17, you'll notice that somewhere around book 5, just after book 5, from 6 on, is when I read Story Grid, and I hired the Story Grid people, some of their editors, did some of their seminars. Big transformational moment for me. It was really good, and you'll see that the books after books 5 were much better than, and books 1 through 5 were really good too. Just I don't want to throw you off, but books 6 on were better organized, better, more understandable, and um, just easier to read. There's a series from there are 2 series out there competing. One's called Masterclass, and the other is called BBC Maestro. And Masterclass has a whole lot of very famous authors: Margaret Atwood, Dan Brown, people like that. Uh, for some reason, their seminars, their video lessons, they're somewhere between 2 to 6 hours worth of information. Just didn't never really helped me. Never really explained anything in the proper detail. They're not well organized. BBC Maestro, on the other hand, has a whole lot of. They don't have anywhere near as many offerings as Masterclass, but they have 3 people who are really good. And what I like about these 3 is they do things completely differently from each other. They have Lee Child, Ken Follett, and Harlan Coben, and all 3 are highly successful. And Lee Child is a pantser. unapologetic pantser. He's got some really good theories on where stories came from, why we like them, we can do to make them more exciting. And then you have Ken Follett, who is incredibly organized, outlines, and he has character Bibles where he thoroughly understands his character before he goes to print to start writing. And he explains his very methodical system. Really great stuff. And then you have Harlan Coben, who's a little mix of both those guys. And I relate to Harlan Coben a little bit better because in terms of methodology, I really like the other authors as well in terms of what they produce. But Harlan Coben and I kind of work on the same principles and the same methodologies. Kind of crazy. One of the things that Harlan Coben said is, "Yeah, we all worry about the work that we just did is going to suck. We all procrastinate way too much. We all like don't work hard enough. We're not disciplined." And I'm like, "Yeah, no kidding. All right, good. It's not just me." Um, Now, there are also services, and there are a lot of scammers out there these days. And so I'd like to point you to two services that I have used and endorse. I am not getting any money from anybody that you see listed here. I am not getting any kickbacks. This is from me to you. And of course, if you work for any of these guys and you want to give me a little piece of the action, I won't say no. But this is from the heart. Story Grid, I use their services, I use their editors. Really good outfit, really good principles, really helped a lot. And the editorial department, they're more holistic, and it's going to be a little bit more expensive, but they can help you get everything: the book cover, the formatting. They can help you with marketing, all kinds of stuff. So if you're looking for somebody to wrap around and get you from point A to point B and to the final published book, the editorial department is terrific. If you're looking if you know all about how to publish and you got your marketing down and you know all that kind of stuff, you just want to improve your work, the Story Grid, you can't beat them. It's really terrific group. Okay, now this is my opinion, and so if you're one of these people and I'm bad mouthing you, you can sue me all you want. It's still my opinion. This is not fact, and for some people, some of the people that I'm going to talk about right now are going to be fine for you, and some people will like them, some people won't. One of the biggest things that I keep hearing from people is Stephen King's book on writing is so good. I loved it. It's a memoir, says so right on the cover. It's a memoir on writing. It's not how to. I read that book with great expectations. Oh, I'm really going to learn from the best. And I did learn a few things. I learned about where he came from and the difficult life he had as a childhood. I got him beat, but what can you say? But he had a lot of good things to say in there about writing. He did not tell me how to write a book. So, because it's a memoir about his writing of books, there's a few things you can pick up in there, and it's good. But most people writers who write books on writing are terrible. And it's kind of like learning from the world's greatest. No one is going to learn soccer from Leo Messi because he's just way out there beyond anybody else. And no one's going to learn driving from Lewis Hamilton because he drives at 200 miles an hour. He's a Formula One champion, if you 7-time world champion. Should have been 9 times, but he was robbed twice. But you just can't learn from those kind of experts. They're just going too far ahead of where you are. They're just sailing out there, and the things they say, I don't know if they even know how to do it. The other thing is that there's a lot of writers. I mentioned 3 earlier on the BBC Maestro series: Lee Child, Ken Follett, and Harlan Coben. And I really believe that the BBC got those guys and brought them down to earth and helped them piece it together, because most writers will tell you stuff that they have just sublimated into their brain, and they don't really know how it works anymore. They've been doing it for so long, and so you got to be careful when you're reading systems and methods by people who've been doing it all their lives. Stephen King was been writing novels since he was 10 years old. Lee Child was in the TV business working on stories before he started as a writer in his 40s. Lots of these people didn't just start writing and learn how to write. Ken Follett was a very young man when he started writing, but that's the trouble, is when they get to the end of their career and start writing a book on how I learned how to write. They don't remember. They've been doing it for 40, 50 years. They really just don't remember how it started. And that's why I'm doing this series. So I'm showing you as I write, and you can figure out what I'm doing and what I'm doing wrong. You can have, I'm sure you'll have plenty of opinions on how bad I'm messing it up. Um, so there's webinars also. There's lots of webinars. Most webinars you pay for, you're gonna get $100 or $500. There's writers retreats. There's this, there's that, there's all kinds of things. I can't speak to those. I've never had one where I really liked it, except for StoryGrid. I gotta make an exception there. StoryGrid was really good. And there was a James Patterson actually had one. It was like a 15-hour series. It was on Facebook. He did it one time. I don't believe he ever did it again, but it was fascinating about how wild and crazy he is as a writer. It's just totally insane, which explains why some of his stories, the the believability really falls apart later in the book. Just wild stuff happens, but it was informative. Um, but there aren't very many that I've seen that really help me in the writing department. There are plenty I've seen that were good at marketing or good at making advertisements or this or that or the other thing. But as far as writing goes, very few. Um, there are lots of marketing methods. You got to be careful of those. It's very important to concentrate on craft, because you put out a book that's really crap, you're going to have to change your pen name when you write your second book because nobody liked that first one. You'll get some bad press, and you want to make sure that doesn't happen to you. So get your craft first, and then get the books out there that you want to improve on and market, put some money behind. There's a lot of Gmail scams, and I call them Gmail scams because they come to you, they've written with AI, where AI has analyzed your book, and they say, God, your book, The Alpine Decision, was really good. It's just got this and this and this, and I think people really ought to know more about it. And then it's got a lot of buzzwords about marketing that someone like me would know. We can do Facebook ads. It, it really sounds great. It's completely written by AI, and I get maybe 20 or 30 of these a day. They have one thing in common. The email address that it's coming from is gmail.com. You know, Joe's Marketing at gmail.com. If Joe's any good at marketing, he's going to have joesmarketing.com, right? So be wary of those. Um, it's really easy to get fooled. There's also a lot of ghost accounts. They claim to be a marketing group. They might even have joesmarketing.com as their URL and their email address. They will cite references. And one that I thought was really interesting was somebody posing as a writer, and they referred me to this writer. They said, "Yeah, just check with Gina, and she will tell you how great we are." And they sent me the email address, and I went, "That's not Gina's email address. I've emailed her just yesterday, and that was not the email address she came back from." And they said, "Oh no, that's the new one. She has a new one." I'm like, "No, she doesn't." And so I took the email and sent it to her with them copied on it, and she goes, "Yeah, who the hell are you? I don't know what you're talking about. That's not my email address. Stop using my name." And they said, "Oh, she's mistaken. She's an imposter." I'm like, "No, I've met her in person. I know she's not an imposter. This is a scam." And they were just totally unapologetic. It was just really brazen. And of course, there's no way you can shut them down either, because they're, who knows where they're located, Nepal, something like that. Yeah, some little island country in the Pacific. Um, I mentioned Masterclass. I won't badmouth them again. You can learn a lot from Margaret Atwood. I mean, you can't miss. But it was not that informative on how I might write a novel for me. Might be for you. So don't let me turn you off to them. It's just I thought those three from BBC were better. Um, Freelance editors, yeah, get references. Make sure you check them out before you give anybody money. Make sure you get references from other writers who've actually had their services, and make sure that those writers are actual writers who've sold books. I've had a lot of references where I look them up. They've got one book out, and it has not sold anything. And you're like, okay, they did so great for you. How come it didn't work? You're like, what was wrong with that? So those are my scams and dubious methods. That brings us to the conclusion of this episode, episode one, just the introduction. And so we've finished session one about the writing life and how I learned what my resources were, what my preferred and recommended sources were. Um, The next thing will go in depth. The next one will probably be a little longer. It's going to be the hero's journey explained in excruciating detail. Well, it won't be. It'll be a high level overview. I'm not going to step on Joseph Campbell's story. I'm going to give you a little explanation of what it is, how it works. And if you have not watched Star Wars, I recommend you watch Star Wars. You can get a quick subscription to Disney, download the movie or watch the movie one time, couple of hours. Well worth it. Great movie, but it really follows the hero's journey like to the T. It's one of the best examples of it, cleanly. Once you learn this, you're going to find, wow, a lot of stories are written this way. Even romance, there's a little twist. We'll cover that as well. Um, Women's fiction is written the same way as action adventure, just a little differently. In action adventure, the hero goes out on a journey to find a quest, and in women's fiction, that journey comes to her. Like Cinderella's minding her own business, and the stepsisters kind of ruin her life. So we'll examine some of those and how StoryGrid works. We'll have a good example of how StoryGrid um, breaks down a scene, and you can get a grasp of that. Again, I still recommend that you read the book and participate in their seminars and services. And again, they are not paying me for this. I'm doing this because I think they're a great outfit. Session 3, we're going to go on to uh, turning tension into money. How I wrote the Alpine decision, and how that came about. Then we'll go into weekly sessions and have a little bit about uh, how I'm writing now, how I opened the book, how my first page, first paragraph, first chapter, the introduction of the main heroine who comes in later and why she comes in later, all kinds of things like that. We'll go through every big decision I made. I'm not the little ones, but all the big decisions. So if you have questions and want some answers, you can. Don't put anything in the comments at YouTube. I'm not going to pay attention to those because there's just too many trolls that are going to come in there and say something about whatever I have in the background here. It. I am not a professional producer. I'm not a professional YouTuber. I'm a writer who is explaining how I write novels. So let's get that straight. And because there's just so many trolls on YouTube, I've done this before and had to delete all the things because just trolls just love this crap. So you can email me, you can DM me on Instagram. Um, you can text me. You can call me, but I have everybody blocked because I get a whole lot of spam calls. So you can text me though and tell me who you are and why, because otherwise I'll just delete it and call you a spammer. As I also get a lot of spam texts, probably 50 to 100 a day. It's just ridiculous. Anyway, yeah, if you have questions, Instagram and email are probably the easiest ways to reach me. Until next time, remember, you'll never get to 114,858 easy steps if you don't start writing.